Good evening, everyone. My name is Omala Sakwanda, and today I'll be talking about poverty in the present. Just as an overview of the context in which I'll be talking about today, I'll be talking about what poverty is, child development, and how it is affected by poverty, how food preferences can be altered by poverty, and the resources available to help people who are impoverished. So, what is poverty? Basically, it's when a person cannot afford to live. What this means is that a person cannot afford food, water, and shelter on a consistent basis, or is living from paycheck to paycheck just to pay for these basic needs. Another form of poverty would be lacking in material goods, things such as water bottles, an extra jacket, or even a computer or cell phone, for example. Even though things are labeled as extra and not needed, not being able to afford them on any basis whatsoever because you are so occupied in covering your basic needs can be within the umbrella of poverty. And just to contextualize poverty for today versus past times, compare it to pre-industrialization and post-industrialization. So pre-industrialization was when there was not a widespread manufacturing of goods. So then widespread poverty could have been a very common thing because there was not enough resources for people to have a comfortable life, or to not ensure everyone to have a comfortable life. Whereas in post-industrialization, just today, even though we have all the resources to enable people who are impoverished to live comfortably, they still live in poverty. So one of the reasons for that could be, for example, the poor simply not having the access to these resources. And just to ground that to our community, I found that there was a 47% increase in poverty from Frederick, Maryland, and that 45% of people are living in deep poverty, which means that one person can live off $5,940, which is almost the equivalent of one person's monthly salary, or even less than that. So you can imagine how hard that would be to stretch that across a 12 calendar year. My next topic will be the effect on child development living in poverty. What this means is that people who are, more specifically children, living in these impoverished communities end up being developmentally delayed because they are in a community where they are struggling for food and water, and their parents are more occupied on things such as trying to survive rather than their child's development. And what this, just to connect it to our classroom within human development, within chapter 9 of our handbook, we learned that there are certain stages for which a child should be within development. And if the parent is not actively involved in ensuring that development, you can end up developmentally delaying them in comparison to their age mates. So if a parent is completely focused on just trying to survive, you can imagine that if the parent is not at all worried on how the child is developing because of their other occupations, their other responsibilities, the child can end up being more behind compared to their age mates within language development, for example. Another effect of poverty is an unhealthy diet. And what this is simply because these people within these poor communities do not have the resources and the education to know what is healthy, what is unhealthy, and what they should do in terms of dieting. And this could be connected to the topic of health in adolescents and even in children from chapter 4 of our book, in that, for example, obesity is a very common thing within these poorer neighborhoods, simply because of the fact that they do not have the same access to these grocery stores, and even, for example, as I mentioned in my slides, third places, which can be categorized as playgrounds, parks, and other intimate areas, which connects to chapter 4, because in order for a person to be considered healthy, they have to have a certain diet and certain amounts of movement every single day. Which obviously, if there's a lack of playgrounds, parks, and entertainment areas and grocery stores within these poor neighborhoods, then there aren't going to be very options to improve a person's diet. And this doesn't just affect people within the US, this affects people worldwide. In that, in 2019, the World Health Organization estimated that there's approximately 38.2 million children under the age of 5 who are overweight or obese. Next, I just wanted to share some of my favorite public resources that I ended up finding while I was researching this topic. One of the top ones for me was CHIP. And what this is basically health insurance for families who qualify. So your family income has to be below a certain amount in order for your children to have health care below the age of 19, which is an incredibly important thing, especially in the US, where medical bills can be very expensive and healthcare is very important. Another resource was fuel assistance, which is basically helping paying for heating within the winter months. This is especially important because even though these poor people can simply just bundle up, for example, wearing jackets and sweaters, they cannot simply change the way the winter cold will affect, for example, their building and their pipes, because even though you can layer up, the pipes can end up freezing if not heated up properly. So this fuel assistance can definitely heat up the entire building and end up being a good help to people who are in these poor financial situations. Another solution such resource would be the summer food service, which is basically a summer food charity or giveaway, in that they give these free meals to children who would otherwise go hungry after the school year ends, because of the school giving these children free meals during the school year. So kind of bring that dependency so that they don't go hungry over that summer because of the reliance of the school feeding them during the school year. And for my last one would be SNAP, which is basically food stamps, in that they give currency to these poor communities, these poor families, in order for them to be able to afford these nutritious food, which will definitely help them in the long run, because then they'll feel more inclined to pay more or have the money to pay for these more nutritious foods in these grocery stores, rather than settling for the cheaper alternative. And here are my references. And I just to say thank you for reading my slides and enjoying my presentation. I would like to hope that you learned something new today, and that if you are a person who needs these resources, that needs that support, that you were able to find an idea on how to help yourself and the people around you as well. So I have to say good night to everyone, and have a great rest of your day.